this particular guest, which obviously this guest can only be popular if the mainstream signs off on him. So if you don't believe that there are still huge levels of racism among the ruling class whites, this is the evidence here. You shouldn't need any more. I'm gonna go let folks know on IG that we're live. Just gonna make a quick little post. And I trust these folks will be starting shortly. And we'll get to our reaction as we go through. If you have any comments, questions, you can use the information, Ty's tuition. Also, there should be a link on the profile on Kick for Stripe if you'd like to use that. Looks like we're good to go. We're rocking and rolling here. If you guys would be so kind as to confirm that you can actually hear the sound from that video.
Avoiding the subject of Nick Fuentes. And let's be clear, the main reason you're hearing about him is because he's popular. A large number of people, especially young men.
So you mean profitable?
What that says about our society and our culture is the subject of ferocious debate. For many people, it's a grave indictment of an insidious immorality. For others, he's a product of a culture which has turned on its own and left many young people feeling listless and bitter. He's either a litmus test for right-wing hypocrisy on free speech or a walking, talking manifestation of where the lines should be drawn. And a frankly preposterous amount of airtime has been spent on debating everything from his ideology to his sexuality and whether anyone should actually talk to him at all.
He's definitely homosexual.
If I were writing a glossary entry on the Streisand effect, I wouldn't put a picture of her next to it. I would put a picture of Nick Fuentes.
They have opted to not do so when it comes to Nazis like Nick Fuentes.
Fuentes takes this guy apart brick by brick. It's a full takedown.
My concern is that people who are a bit more moderate are deeply alarmed by Nick Fuentes.
I was very happy to see that, like, Nick Fuentes really passed that test with flying colors.
That fragmentation is being caused purposefully by a splinter faction of people led by a young man named Nick Fuentes.
That's the war. Can you get the beef prices down? Not crazy things that Nick Fuentes or these other loons say on social media.
Well, it looks like all the screaming about Nick Fuentes on the internet is finally dying down a little bit.
So now we had on this guy, this Fuentes guy, and never challenged him.
You should have Nick Fuentes on your show and you could ask him questions about that.
The truth is, it doesn't make a lot of sense to spend all this time.
Peace to the Saints, live right now, reacting to Piers Morgan discussing or debating or interviewing Nick Fuentes. Hit the link below.
A platform of his own, which is often bigger than most of the people complaining, and he uses it to speak unchallenged to his many followers. It's on that basis that I've invited him to appear live and uncensored on my platform, and Nick Fuentes joins me now. Nick Fuentes, welcome to Uncensored.
Hi, great to be with you.
Hi, great to be with you. This guy's a nerd dweeb. Now, here's a funny thing. Claims to be Catholic and then has all this pagan stuff in the background, which is fine if you admit that it's pagan.
I don't think we've ever met. You can correct me if that's wrong.
Evil face, too. Do you guys notice that Nick Fuentes' face is just very evil? He's a small little fella, but just like always has this like angry look on, but he's never caught a fade in his life. A small little weak fella.
I know about you. I know that increasingly people are talking about you in a more mainstream environment than you may be used to. So for those of you who know nothing about Nick Fuentes, I want this.
And I want you guys to all be keenly aware that the fact that Nick Fuentes can be popular is only an expression of the deep levels of racism and hatred in the Western white population. Full stop. That's the only thing that it expresses. Now, does that mean that there's not a multitude of colored people who are also sick mentally? Oh, absolutely. But they're bootlickers. They're not the leaders. They're the followers, you see. They're the, you know, and I'm going to deal with those bootlickers pretty soon. So keep your eyes open. Make sure you're subscribed on Kick, because this is where I'll be doing it.
To be an opportunity to get to the real person. I don't know who that person is, but I do want to use this opportunity to get there. I've seen you talk as we prepared for this in exchanges with people and on your show, saying if you fear it's going to be very hostile, it's going to be an ambush, all those kind of things. I don't intend it to be overtly hostile. I don't intend to ambush you. I intend it to be an examination of what you said on.
Imagine he's like, let me make this racist comfortable so that I don't offend his audience, because whether he's racist or not, whether I agree or not, the most important thing is the money. And the money comes from the views and, favorable stance with the audience. And Nick has audience. And so now you see everyday people that you thought were mainstream revealing that they're really just controlled by the moolah, baby. There's no religion in these people. There's no God in these people.
The record, an examination of what you believe or what you say you believe, and an examination of what your rising popularity says about the state of the conservative movement in America. So those are my goals from this interview. What are your goals? Why are you doing it?
There is no conservative movement in America. This guy is a homosexual. There's no conservative movement. Milo Yiannopoulos, who is a conservative homosexual, he already outed this guy and said that this guy's a homosexual. Everyone's been saying it. So why can we not acknowledge it? Well, I'll tell you why. It's because the white male today is so downtrodden that they don't care. Many of them are perverts, and that's because they grew up on adult content. We need a real leader who has morality. We don't need a dweeb like this who's a genetic mess. And not even white. I mean, just imagine the whites are down so badly. They have someone who's a mixed race person purporting to be the white Superman while being a miniature version of what the Aryan Wonder Man should be.
I thought it'd be interesting. And, you've talked a lot about me on your show over the years, and this is the first time you actually extended the invitation. I think it might be the second, actually. I think we talked about doing it during A24 a few years ago, but you've talked a lot about me with the panel, and now you've extended the invitation to talk to me. And I think it'd be interesting for me to maybe clarify some positions and maybe get to know you a little better as well. So I'm looking forward to it.
There is a belief that you have two personas. There's one that you roll out now for podcasts and for shows like mine, where you come across.
There is a belief. He sounds so very kind and nice with him, like playing with the gloves on.
Across as reasonable. And then there's your show on Rumble, where you often come across as having, a very unreasonable view on things. This is what.
Now, it's funny how he's using these euphemisms, unreasonable. What about racist, vicious, hateful? What about those descriptors?
Coleman Hughes said about you.
Nick Fuentes knows exactly what he's doing. He is consciously playing this double game as part of a long-term strategy to become popular enough to take the reins of power, at which point he plans to pivot towards the extreme and unpopular policies that he advocates daily on Rumble.
So first of all, what is your response to that?
Well, first of all, I would say that Coleman Hughes is a propagandist. He works for the Free Press, which is run by Barry Weiss. So I think you have to consider the source. And Barry Weiss is a pro-Israel partisan. Free Press is just bought out by
Now, mind you, here's the funny thing. You can tell that Piers Morgan is trying to position himself to be on favorable terms with Nick, because the truth is he never called Nick a racist, which is what Nick is. So why are we not using the term racist? Never called him hateful, never called him discriminatory. Why can't we call him what he is? This is a bit of a weird thing. So Piers is trying to position himself in a favorable way with Nick and with Nick's audience, because he views this ascent as unstoppable and inevitable. And furthermore, I want you to take note that the dweebs who follow Nick did not actually address the question. He's engaging in both a red herring and an ad hominem. So he's attacking the source of the information as opposed to dealing with the information. So someone writes, so surprised to see the saints speak this way, speak in logic. If you'd like to come on and engage conversation, I'll drop the link for you. But anyways, he's not dealing with the guy's actual arguments. He's attacking the source. He's engaging in a red herring, and he's being evasive, and Pierce is very much so letting it go. So I don't expect Pierce to press him very much at all, because the most strategic thing and the most direct and honest thing would have been if Pierce said, "Hey, Nick, I have a quote of you saying the N-word hard R on 5 different clips. Would you like to watch them? Okay. What's that about?" Or, "Hey, Nick, I have a quote of you saying that these people are intellectually inferior and should be eradicated. Would you like to respond to that? Here, let's play the clip. Boom. Let's respond." But instead, he's not being quite straightforward. And that's something that we should take note of.
CBS for $150 million by Larry Ellison or his son, David Ellison. And so I think that's coming from a particular point of view. We can't pretend like that's coming from a vacuum or from some fixed position. That's coming from a propaganda outlet that's in favor of Israel. That's first. But second, I would say he is right about the two personas. And I think that everybody understands this on some level. On my show, I make jokes and I use...
Oh, here they go again. Lies, lies. I make jokes. That's an important thing. I've already identified several strategies that the white supremacists use. Lies is number one. You know, you make jokes. It's been said by one great white that a joke is an epitaph on an emotion.
Rhetoric, and I'm hyperbolic because for a long time I had an audience that was small on these like dissident platforms.
Why is Piers letting him talk nonsense at length? Why doesn't Piers say, "Hey, Nick, let's be serious. You stated, quote, blah, 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 end quote." Why let the babbling go on?
Was on D Live for many years. A lot of people don't even know what that is. And so
what does this have to do with the actual question? Why is Piers not doing the proper thing as a journalist to say, "Hey, that's fantastic. Can we actually answer the question I asked?"
Well, I had a small following and we had sort of like an in-group sense of humor and memes and things like that. And you talk about it one way on a freewheeling live stream when I'm by myself and I'm ranting, and we make jokes and we play devil's advocate. We play with different positions.
We play devil's advocate. No, you are the devil, little buddy.
But then when you sit down in an interview like this one and people ask me a good faith question, what do you actually believe? Well, then I clarify and I say, well, here I'm not joking. Here I'm not being hyperbolic. I'm not being rhetorical. I'll tell you precisely what I believe. As far as this idea that I'm going to get power and then turn into Hitler, that just sounds totally insane to me. I'll be honest.
No, that's completely reasonable. And that's precisely what we can expect to happen.
It just sounds insane.
Do you have aspirations for political power?
Not really. I think that if I wanted to run for office, I wouldn't say a lot of the things that I say. I don't know that a lot of people would vote for me. I tend to offend everybody, even a lot of people.
No, being able to run for office in a country that's 60% white while being a racist who is not a racist against whites, rather you're a racist against everyone else. I mean, that's a very favorable position. So, you know, what he's saying doesn't make sense.
They like me. So no, I'm a truth teller. I like to tell the truth. I like to do my live stream.
Who is Nick Fuentes? Tell me about your upbringing. I know you grew up in the suburbs of Chicago. Tell me about your early years.
Or early how? Like my childhood or a little bit
your
later?
Childhood, yeah.
Well, I grew up in the suburbs.
This is the most brainless question. Why would Piers even waste our time? Tell us about your early years. Like, who cares?
Because of divorce, but because both of their fathers had died. They endured a lot of dysfunction. And I think that's one of the reasons they came together and they related to each other. Why I tend to have a lot of these family values. It was a baseball talk, but this is a big part of where my...
Man, this boy got to stop plucking his eyebrows so hard. I think he plucked his eyebrows too hard. They're kind of like too far apart. Like his eyebrow starts right here. I don't know if it's the cocaine or the butt sex that's causing the issues, but Brody looks a little bit weird.
Political awakening came from. I sort of left this bubble, if you could call it that. When I went to college in 2016, I went to Boston University and I read a lot of things online and I realized the country does not look like LaGrange Park. It doesn't look like Western Spring. What made me an American nationalist. I said, I want to preserve my home and the things that are familiar to me and the things I like about my home, what makes it America. So that's a little bit about my background. I don't know where you want to go with that, but
Well, he's trying to cloak racism because what he's saying actually fundamentally does not make sense, especially at his age. If he's saying, I'm trying to preserve my home, your home, does that mean America? If you're trying to preserve America as it is, America is already a country of extraordinary number of immigrants and a matriarchal system. So is that what you're trying to preserve? What already exists? That's what you've known. That's what's existed during your lifetime. So you're actually not trying to preserve that, but actually you're trying to move into a time that maybe never existed, a time where white folks were honorable and took lead of a multicultural society in an honorable way. Maybe that never existed. The farther back you go in American history, we see more prosperity. It's true, but we also see more hatred and other things. And so it's the inability to be honest that's why you can't trust the white supremacists. And also when you're dealing with folks like Nerd Fuentes, we have to be cautious because these are people without vision. They don't know how to talk about a vision for the future. They just speak of an idealized past, which may have never existed. As I stated before, life is better remembered than lived.
I suppose my first obvious question is, were your parents immigrants to the United States, or were their parents, or were their grandparents? In other words, at some stage, I presume.
Look at this little evil-looking fella.
There were immigrants in your family who came to the U.S. Is that correct?
There were. I believe
So I think that he should go back to wherever they're from. You see, how about this? If we make a rule, if your parents and your great-great-great-great-great-grandparents and your ancestors weren't here at the founding of the country, you go back to wherever you were. I'm down for that one.
My mother was 4th generation and my father was 3rd generation. So their ancestors came here on my mom's side in the 1860s, I believe.
From where?
The first wave of Italian immigration. My father's ancestors, I think they came around at the turn of the century in 1900.
From where?
So your view of immigration, and we'll get to the specifics about your views on immigration. Are they not affected at all by the fact that if it wasn't for immigration, you wouldn't exist as an American?
Well, I would certainly exist, but like you said, maybe not as an American.
Well, then you idiot. Then the answer is no, you wouldn't exist. You fool. So you're actually not respecting the true question. Deception.
Certainly that's influenced in some measure.
It's not in some measure. It's wholly the lies.
But I think that the kind of immigration that we had for a long time in the country, it's different than the immigration that we have now. And let's just say for openers, it's different.
Okay, so that's an important thing to consider. This is a racial perspective. This is racism. The white supremacists, they speak about immigration, but what they really mean to say is that they have a problem with people who are not white coming into the country because they're racist. And so they blame the colored peoples of the world. And it's curious because only could this country exist had the white people left their white Mecca. I mean, really, if white people actually loved being around exclusively white people, they'd stay in Europe. And Europe's an all right place. I've been there many times. But the truth is that the European always seeks to insert themselves among others. You can observe this literally on every continent on Earth. And had the European not went on all these damn adventures, we'd all be where we belong, so to speak. Blacks among blacks, Asians among Asians. We wouldn't have a huge multiracial country such as the United States. But this has only resulted through the murder and the adventurism of the Europeans.
Immigrants, they're coming from a different place with a different culture, a different religion. It's not the same as it was. So first, you have a qualitative difference. My ancestors, for the most part, I have 3 European grandparents from Ireland and Italy, 1 from Mexico. They came from Europe. They came from a society where there's a common ancestry, there's a common religion, common civilization.
So he's like, they came from Europe. It's like, no, talk about the Mexican one, though. Talk about the Mexican one. It's like, well, why can't the white supremacists actually be white? Bro, you're a quarter Mexican, and you're trying your best to just skip over that. No, be real, my boy. Be real.
The people that have come in since 65, since Hart Celler, they're coming from China, India, the Northern Triangle, Mexico, Venezuela. And so first, they're just different people. Secondly, it's a quantitative difference. There's way more And it's an unceasing, always increasing wave. For the first 3 or 4 waves of immigration, you would have a major influx of immigrants and then it would stop. And then you'd have another wave and then it would stop. This one, it just keeps going up for 35 years.
Now, let's see if Piers asks an intelligent question based on his response, which is to say, okay, you've made it clear that you're comfortable and pleased with European, or shall we say white, immigration. So now we're talking about race. We're not talking about immigrants. So in as much as we're talking about race, what is it about the white race that you believe is superior to all the other races? Let's get into it. Let's see if Piers is actually going to put together some meaningful arguments or just questions, really.
And it's too many. So that's really where I would draw the distinction between maybe where I originate from. I would even just simply call that immigration. What this is an invasion. It's a completely different policy.
But you mentioned.
Now, that's ironic for a person who positions themselves as white to accuse anyone of invading. Invading really is that's the specialty of the European and of the white races. In fact, right now, the United States is positioning to invade yet another country, Venezuela. Why? For the same reason, to pillage and steal, which is what these people like to do. Actually, I have to add that to my long list of what they like to do, steal. They'll steal land, they'll steal your life, they'll steal your history, they steal many things. But the irony is he's calling this an invasion, and really mostly the Europeans are the countries that invade. Invasion and immigration are radically different, so we find that he's going back to my number one point about the white supremacists, which is lies. And he said so much, not all of which was on topic, and so it's going to make it harder for Piers Morgan to stay laser focused.
Even call it the same thing.
But you mentioned Mexico in that list. Your father is half Mexican. So,
yeah.
I mean, by your criteria, part of the invasion would include your father, presumably, and his immediate descendants.
Look at this psychopath. Nerd Fuentes is an utter psychopath, like a truly deranged, twisted, self-hating individual. Look at him. You talk about his father being Mexican, and look at his face. Like, not a happy person. Who would want to follow such a nut? And this is only an expression of the truly pathological nature of humankind today, but particularly the whites in America, because this ball is a psychopath and he looks like a psychopath. That's the worst part. Like, how can we not figure this out?
Who came from Mexico?
Not really true, because when my father's ancestors came here, it was a small fraction of the total immigrants that came from Mexico. I don't believe that we should have 0 immigrants for.
Wait, hold on. Let's rewind that. Listen to the question.
Forever. Total
descendants who came would include. So,
yeah.
I mean, by your criteria, part of the invasion would include your father, presumably. And
yes, he said part of the invasion would include your father, because Nick defined the invasion as all immigrants that are from non-European countries. Your father, he came from Mexico, so he would be a part of the invasion. So let's see if Nick is honest. Absolutely not. Here we go.
His immediate descendants who came from Mexico.
Not really true, because when my father's ancestors came here, it was a small fraction of the total immigrants that came from Mexico. I don't believe that we should have 0.
Wow. So now we're going to make an exception. So now it's okay to have some amount of immigrants because my dad is Mexican.
Immigrants forever, or even 0 immigrants from non-white countries. But you have to draw the distinction. My father's father, he was here in the 40s and 50s. It was his parents, or I believe either his parents or grandparents, that came here even earlier. Up until 1965, 90% of the immigrants were coming from Europe. I have no problem with that. If we have 10% of them coming from Mexico or Latin America, maybe that's reasonable, but that's not what it is now. Now
Let's see if Piers has some journalistic skills to pin down the true crux of the argument, which is racial. It's not cultural, it's racial, because culture, any racial group can have any culture, but this fellow's talking about race. So let's see if Piers can get after that.
Got 10 million illegals in 4 years under Joe Biden, and you got millions more legal immigrants from China, India, Venezuela, El Salvador, and it's so many with no break for assimilation, and they're all from non-white countries. It's transforming what America is.
Now, think about how stupid this is, and this is why, like, Pierce really just needs to let me do this interview, and I'll tell you why. Because if we're talking about assimilation, that's assimilation to American culture. See, Nick, like many of these commentators, they have no culture and experience themselves. They're not sophisticated people. They're provincial people. So he's talking as though Europe is America. Europe is not America. In fact, their culture is radically different. They're far more socialist. They're far more government dependent minded people. They're less inclined to entrepreneurship. They're far more liberal, even though America is quite liberal. It's a radically different culture. So what you have is him suggesting that if people come from Europe, they don't need to assimilate into Americanism. Well, that's not true. That's a lie. Is Pierce going to pick this up? Nah, see, I actually don't quite think he is. But where I would agree with little Nicholas is that it's true. You should assimilate into whatever culture or country you go into as appropriate. But in fact, he's not talking about assimilation. He's putting up all of these smoke screens. He's, frankly, lying.
Yes. And again, that's the distinction. That's what makes it unacceptable.
I always believe everybody is a product of their environment. Right? I've interviewed thousands of people. Maybe 3, 4, 5,000 people from all different walks of life. But the one common theme I would say is everyone's a product of their environment. And I was reading some stuff about you in the last few days. There was an episode of your podcast.
See, now here's the problem is that Pierce did not strategically respond to what Nick is saying, nor did he drill down enough to get Nick to reveal himself. And that's a problem when you have people like Pierce or whomever who don't have the intellectual toolkit or even the true desire that Nick is able to get by and continue pretending, and he's fooling the people of average IQ. There's one average IQ person in my live chat. If you think that you can like a Nick Fuentes and like Marquette Devon Burton at the same time, it's actually impossible, in as much as Nick Fuentes is a hateful and racist person. That's something that I'm not into. There was a gentleman who came on my show recently, and he came on through some curious means, and he used a racial slur against white people. And I immediately said, hey, no, I don't agree with that. We're going to have to cut you off right there, because it's not about hatred. We can talk the truth of any race, but what we're not going to do is talk hatred. We can speak accurately about the history, but there's no need for the hatred. Let me acknowledge a handful of folks supporting the work, and I do thank those of you who have used the information below, and as well the information on kick.com/Marquette Devon to support the work. Shout out to Juan. He writes, "Peace to the Saints. That suit is top notch. Where can I get me one exactly like it? But I know the answer is I can't. There's none other like it. Keep spreading that ism." Absolutely. I appreciate you, Juan. Shout out to the real ones. You can't come on the drip trip. We got the drip trip coming up in February. And we'll be getting custom drip made head to toe. You dig? Custom shoes included, custom jackets, however you like it. So acknowledge Al-Batar. He writes, "Peace of the Saints. It's disappointing to see uninteresting males to be platformed when they've done nothing and they're nobody. Sass or nothing. I'm trying to tell you, man. But it lets you know that there is a plan and a script, and the Western European man remains largely unchanged, still hateful and racist. And that's why they're platforming this guy, because he expresses something that is true to them, something that they believe in." Darius writes, "Instead of being proud of human achievement, some people get their excitement and joy from witnessing others suffer. True devils that are not holding red tridents or pitchforks. We have a ton of work to do, indeed, and we must get after it." He further writes, "Do you believe that racism was less popular when Barack Obama was president?" Popular? No, I think racism stays fairly consistent, and the percentage of devils on earth stays fairly consistent. However, the question is, do you have a person at the top condoning it such that people can express themselves? You see, the difference is not are people pro or anti-LGBTQ based on the president. It's based on, can they express how they feel? Like, if we had a president that was all for openness and honesty, would people start to use the F word outright? Oh, absolutely. Now they'll probably regret it, because eventually the pendulum will swing back, and they'll still be immortalized on video saying things that are questionable. Shout out to Ramon, writes, "Tuition for the breakdown. Peace of the Saints." I appreciate you, man. So acknowledge via PayPal. Frank writes, "Peace of the Saints, big homie. Thanks for the push to be great and innovative. Sassin or nothing in a real way, man. And we're going to need the organization. I tell you that much. That's a guarantee. Let's work."
where you talked about your father, Bill Fuentes, and how he wouldn't take the family, including you, to certain restaurants because he believed they were associated with African Americans. We would be deciding where to go to eat, you said. What are we going to do for dinner tonight? It was a running joke. Me and my sister would say Applebee's, and my dad would say we would never eat at Applebee's. Not in a million years should you be caught dead, Fuentes said about Applebee's. Go to a different restaurant, a local restaurant. No Applebee's, no Red Lobster. That is commonly known as black fare.
Damn.
And you also shared another story about your family and restaurants. It said, before me and my sister were born, my family had a saying about Olive Garden that contains the N-word that we're not allowed to say.
Now, there you go. He's basically saying a racist family, which is not surprising at all. But the funny thing is that of all the racist things that Nerd Fuentes has said, this is the least of them. Boy, look at this devil. Well, I got to take a screenshot of that. This ugly rascal is something else. I got to take a screenshot of that. Look at that ugly face. Oh, my goodness. And who would really want to preserve this kind of DNA? Look at his mouth. Looks utterly gross. Looks very Grinch-like. Let me enlarge this so you guys can see this. This is disgusting. Very Grinch-like. Look at that boy. Oh, who would want to preserve those genetics? That is bizarre. Again, the delusion, the self-aggrandizement. Imagine being inferior and then claiming quite the opposite.
So my question, based on that anecdote that you say on your own podcast, is, do you think you grew up in a racist environment? Your father was inherently racist.
Clearly.
And that thought process moved to you.
Well, I would say it's a new low. I've been attacked for being a racist many times, but to attack my father, to attack my parents based on anecdotes, I would say that's sort of a new low.
Hang on, it's your anecdote.
Yeah, but he's not here to defend himself.
You are.
And my parents are.
You told the story.
And I will.
This guy, Nick, is a very slimy, slithery character, very strategic. He says, oh, my father's not here to defend himself, so we can't talk about that. Well, you were repeating that on your podcast and, in fact, bragging about it and very proud of it. So not only is it your father's view, it's also your view. So you absolutely should speak on it instead of running.
I'm not trying to ambush you. As I said at the start, Nick, to be clear.
No, it's not an ambush,
Nick, to be clear,
I think everybody
I'm not
understands.
ambushing you. I'm literally reading an anecdote that you revealed on your podcast. It's you that's put it in the public domain.
I know.
I'm simply asking you whether my assessment of that, which is that your father didn't want to take you to certain restaurants because of what you refer to as, they were commonly known as black fare, whether that attitude to African Americans in that instance permeated to you. It's a reasonable question.
Yeah, no, like I said, I think everybody knows what that is, but I'll address it. I'll engage with it, and I'll defend my father from the charge of racism.
Sure.
No, my parents are not racist, and they've never been racist.
Yeah, explain how.
I'll tell you about my parents. They used to have a school in Chicago.
Well, now this guy's a very strategic politician, and this is what I find disgusting is when you have people like Piers, he can ask the question, but he doesn't know how to press the guest to actually answer the question. So your father was using the N-word in front of his children and wife, and now you're talking about, well, my parents had a school, and in the school there is like, we're not talking about your parents' school right now, little buddy. We're talking about your father using the N-word. So why don't you stay on topic? And this is why you can't respect anyone who follows Nick Fuentes, because they're a closeted racist and they just don't want to admit it to the public. It's like, just be yourself. You don't have to lie. We're not fools. We can see that you're a racist.
Chicago in the South Loop, where they instructed people on how to shoot firearms. It was a security school, and most of the clients were black. And I believe actually one of their clients was Larry Hoover's son at one point.
Okay, so what's your point, dummy? Are you saying that your father made money off of N-words? A lot of racists make money off of N-words. That's like me saying, well, I own a plantation and all my slaves are white, so I can't be racist against white people. My slaves are white. It's like, what? I'm making money off of these people. That doesn't mean they have value to me. Be serious.
Point, sort of a funny story. And so most of their clients would come in from the south side of Chicago.
What's your point? What is your point? That's completely irrelevant. Piers, please be intelligent enough to catch this.
My grandmother, she grew up in the projects in the city.
Irrelevant.
And so my family being in
irrelevant
Chicago, being ethnics, being Italian, Irish, Mexican, and the West Side on Taylor Street, all over the city. My family for many generations have lived near and around Black people. And look, my views about Black people and their views about Black.
Now, this is utterly bizarre that people think that he could see me intellectually. He's not even good at cloaking his dodging of questions. It's very blatant. There's no slickness here. I'd obliterate him immediately because he's not as bright as people are suggesting. And again, this is what the whites do. They're the greatest marketers. They market themselves as superior, but we see that that's just frankly not the case. That's why China is overtaking the West. And it's not because whites are dumb. It's not because Asians are particularly gifted. It's because of culture. And in a sick culture, in a degenerate culture such as we have today in the West, degeneracy is going to promote degeneracy. And this guy's a degenerate.
Black people are shaped with experiences with Black people. And what they will tell you, what my parents would say if they were here, is that for many, many years, the older generations of Black people were very respectful, very humble, very decent. In fact, my grandma used to have an...
Piers, why are you letting him go off topic? We're talking about his father saying the N-word. Did you forget that, Piers?
Anecdote. She grew up in a lot of dysfunction. Her mother was mentally ill, and they would be having dinner in the project.
Now, he said his mother's mother was mentally ill. Now, those are really bad genetics. Like, certainly they shouldn't reproduce. Now, one thing I will concede is I do support eugenics. And when you have mental illness in your family tree, like, you probably should not procreate, my dear boy.
And
in fact, the racists that Nick supports, they also support eugenics. And so very much so. Maybe it's a good thing he's a homosexual and he's not having children.
So much chaos and dysfunction and disagreement and fighting. And she would look across the way out the window at a Black family in the other apartment, and they'd be holding hands around the table saying grace. And this is sort of the culture that used to prevail. But now what you have in the city is that there's no accountability for the Black people. And now
the fascinating thing is, like, well, is there accountability for the white people? Or the white people of today the same quality of the white people of yesteryears? No, they've both degraded in parallel.
Chicago has become a complete dump because these teenagers go.
So now Piers is letting him go from your father is saying the N-word and raising you on the N-word to now he's on a soapbox talking bad about Black people. And also notice there's never any interrogation of his own culture, which would be Mexican and white culture.
Out and take over the city. They call them teen takeovers.
And you know that Piers essentially and fundamentally agrees with him, because we've seen Piers Morgan far more fiery and interrupt guests quite a bit, especially when the guest is not, bowing down to the people who wear those hats.
That's the euphemism for it. They're teenagers, but they all come from the same nation, destroyed. And you killed this day. We have a lot of people.
Wow, Piers is really letting them go off topic for like 5 minutes straight.
And parents, unlike in a city where there's a lot of different kinds of people, and I think anybody in Chicago will tell you the same.
I live in London. It's one of the biggest and most diverse cities in the world.
But it's not the same.
Well, actually, it's a big, diverse city. The only difference is we don't have the gun violence because we don't have guns. That's a whole different story. I don't want to get into that with you. I have got into that before.
You got
in America.
A knife problem. You got sword problems.
We have problems with
Aladdin.
We have problems with violent crime.
This is the unhinged response Piers is giving. So you let the boy talk for 8 minutes straight, and then you reply with something that's completely non-germane. Wow.
I make no pretense of it. So the idea that somehow I'm cosseted in London because I'm not in Chicago.
I didn't say that.
Well, you kind of implied it, but I guess my point about the environment, I'm not saying you are a product of your environment. I'm saying most people are in some capacity.
Mm-hmm.
No, Piers, did you forget? Earlier, you were saying that he was raised in a racist household with a father that says the N-word. And so you were, in fact, suggesting that he's a product of his environment. So it seems as though Piers can't even track his own arguments. And this is the bizarre nature of the clown world we live in, where you have low IQ and degeneracy reigning. It's just bizarre, utterly bizarre. Piers can't remember what he was saying. And that makes sense because you allowed this young bastard to filibuster. Shout out to Brad supporting the work, came in via Venmo. Appreciate you. Man, also acknowledge Constantine since intuition. Shout out to the real one supporting the work. Appreciate you. As we say, men pay what they owe. Make your name known.
When I read that anecdote, it's just to remind you, it's not something I have put out there. You told this story, right? And you said that
you said this. We're looping. You said this
no,
already.
but you haven't really directly, I think, responded to it, which is whether your
What do you mean? I think you have not directly responded to it, and you spent 8 minutes discussing other things. It's called a red herring.
father would not take you to certain restaurant chains because he associated them with Black Americans. Is that true?
No, well, see here, if you're in America, you would say that Olive Garden is not real Italian food. Applebee's, TGI Fridays, the stuff is a load of crap. My dad was just a food snob, but no, it's got nothing to do with that. My best friend in first grade was a black guy. We're not a racist family. So
okay, so when you told the story, I'm just curious. So when you told that anecdote,
my dad's a food snob, so he uses the N-word. Wait, did I hear that correctly? Did Nerd Fuentes say my dad's a food snob, so he uses the N-word to describe food that's beneath us? That doesn't make sense. It's like food makes me racist. Was that the explanation? Like my dad doesn't like certain food, so he makes racist statements? Can't be real. You can't be real. This is the highly intelligent. Wow.
Which clearly on the face of it is racist, right? You're basically saying your father made racist decisions about where you would go as a family to eat. Are you saying
the lies? The lies.
Well, I'm just going to ask you a question. Are you saying that when you told that story, you didn't mean to infer that he was racist? And do you understand why when somebody like me reads that anecdote for the first time, as I did this week?
Now, just imagine you have a white man who probably himself is at a level racist talking to a white racist who's very racist. And the white racist is claiming like, no, white guy, yeah, I wasn't racist. If a white guy thinks you're racist, you're saying racist things against black people, like 9 out of 9, you're probably racist, buddy. I mean, as dim-witted as Piers appears to be, or as favorable as Piers appears to be, I find it just utterly bizarre. You're using the N-word. Your father's using the N-word, and this has nothing to do with race. What? We're using the N-word? That has nothing to do with race. That's how bizarre. It's so bizarre. And that's why I let people know, if you're dealing with a white supremacist, you're dealing with someone who is pathological, which is to say mentally unwell. And a part of their pathology are a number of things. Deceit is first and foremost. And in addition to that, delusion of their position and the delusion of the positions of others. And all while having this delusion, there's this bizarre aspect of they feel the need to insert themselves among the others whom they consider inferior, right? The European and all their superiority couldn't stay in Europe. They had to go to Africa. They had to go to Latin America. They had to go to India. They had to go to Asia because they want to be among the inferiors. It's almost like there's some sort of energy that the melanated people have that these Europeans were like seeking. Because, frankly, I'll tell you, when I believe that I'm superior to people, I don't want to be around them. Like, for example, poor people. I don't want to be around them. I want to live in a neighborhood with people just like me, people who are financially well off. So I avoid poor people at all costs because I feel they're inferior, right? Now, similarly with race, if you really believe that you're superior as a white person, you just avoid all non-white people. But that's not the case.
I reach a different conclusion.
Well, I understand what you're doing, which is the sort of making of a murderer. How did he become racist? Well, his father didn't eat an Olive Garden because he said that's not real Italian food. Hang on, can I? What's with the interruptions? Can I explain?
I'm literally reminding you of something you said on your show, which led me to conclude a certain thing. If I'm wrong, tell me.
Yeah, it was said in jest as a humorous anecdote, and now you're trying to spin it into a narrative, which is his parents are racist. He comes from a long line.
So here's the funny thing. Again, and I wrote this one down, is the line in parentheses, it was a joke, right? It was a joke. That's their strategy. It was a joke. Imagine saying the N-word and then your response is, oh, you're trying to spin it and say that I'm racist because I said the N-word. That was just a joke. So you say a racist term, but that's not racist. That's a joke. So what could be racist? If using racial insults is not racist, what could be racist? I guess there's no such thing as racist, because racial insults are not racist. So What's left?
I'm a racist. And I think everybody knows my parents are boomers. And these people come, well, you're a boomer, I guess, too. And
Yeah, so that would mean that he knows more about boomers than you, Nick. So stop with the nonsense.
no
I'm
way,
60.
right? You were born
I'm
in what,
60.
19? Yeah. So you're a boomer also. Or maybe you're a Gen Xer. I suppose it's sort of on the cusp. But it's a humorous anecdote. These are kind of the attitudes of baby boomers in society, but you're trying to spin it into a narrative, which is you're a product of your environment. Your dad's
That's not a spin. That's pretty linear.
racist because of this joke. Now you're a racist. And I don't think that's a fair characterization.
No, that's completely fair. It's very linear, actually. It's like saying, hey, Marquette, if you have been raised by a father who beats women, then you start beating women. I surmise that you got that example and you came to an acceptance that this is like an okay thing to do. So, yeah, I think that all adds up. He's saying that's what you were trained and conditioned into, and that's the example that you observed over a lifetime from someone that you admire, which would be your father. That makes perfect sense.
People can make their own minds up. They can go back and listen to you say it. I mean, the beauty of what I'm going to talk to you about in this interview is that almost all of it is just going to be reminding you what you have said and asking you what you meant. Your position about that story is that it was a joke. Okay. I want to come to something else you said. This is where you talk about Jews, women, and blacks. Let's just take a listen.
They're always coming up with, no, it's not the Jews. No, it's not women. No, it's not blacks. It's actually really complicated. No, it fucking isn't at all. Jews are running society. Women.
Now, here's the funny thing. You can see that the fella has two different personalities, one that he takes out for the public, and the other one is his true personality. And we see that the means of communication, even the style of dress, is radically different.
They need to shut the fuck up. Blacks need to be imprisoned for the most part.
Now that's wild. He said blacks need to be imprisoned. He didn't say black criminals. He just said blacks need to be imprisoned. Which I could only think, why not just execute them? I mean, if inherently they are a people, obviously by genetics, because if you're talking about blacks, you're talking about a racial category as opposed to a culture or an ethnic group. Black would be an indicator of race. And so if their genetics incline them to criminality, then you might as well just eliminate them altogether. What would be the point of even incarcerating them?
And we would live in paradise. It's that simple.
Okay. Would you like to clarify what you meant there?
That's all true. That's 100% true.
So here's the problem. When you say clarify something that's already clear, you're inviting him to lie. So you're basically saying, hey, we heard the truth. Now start tap dancing and try to, pull the wool over our eyes and reinterpret something that's already clear. So what Piers should have done instead, after playing that clip, is he should have gave the explanation, the clarification that I gave, which was just a direct interpretation instead of allowing Nick to go into his politician bag and start lying about the reality of what we just saw. What we just saw is very clear. It's racial hatred.
Everything I said in that clip is true.
Including that blacks need to be imprisoned for the most part.
Yeah. Yes.
But all of them?
No, for the most part.
What does the most part mean? What percentage of American black?
Yeah, for the most part means majority, but let's hear what he has to say. But I think that for the most part was just a bit of humor. I think he just really wants to eradicate. I mean, that could be the only logical solution.
Would you like to see in prison?
Whatever the percentages of the murderers, I think it's 1 in 20.
Oh, now he's talking about the murderers. Oh, so now you've reduced it from most of them to now we're just talking about the murderers. Well, if that's the case, that we're just talking about murderers, my dear boy, with your command of language, it being your first language, English, why wouldn't you merely just say murderers should be imprisoned? Yes, you see, just say murderers or criminals need to be imprisoned, but you are an unrepentant racist and now you're lying. So let's see if Piers catches this one or if it gets by him yet again.
Black men will commit a murder in their lifetime. So maybe let's say that 5%.
Oh, so you're talking about black people who murder people?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
No,
yeah. You didn't say that. You just said blacks
right.
need to be imprisoned for the most part.
Thank you.
You didn't clarify that you were talking about black murderers.
Right. No, you're right. That's a good addition to that. That's a great point.
You think it's funny?
Yeah, he does.
I think, yeah, I do. I think it's hilarious.
Yeah, he does think it's funny, Piers, because what he's doing is he's utilizing you, Piers Morgan, to make him more popular, to bring him to more mainstream audiences. And he knows what he is. Many of his fans know what he is. And he's laughing at the fact that you're buying into his pretend facade and giving him more of the oxygen needed to forward his hateful movement. So yes, he's laughing at the fact that his plan is working according to how he's laid it. And I'd say he's winning in as much as that's the case, but also Piers Morgan is winning because the truth is, even though he has a veneer of distaste for this racism, Piers is interviewing this fellow because it brings in the numbers, the ratings, the money. And what we can identify with the white leadership class is that consistently they only have one God. None of them are Catholic. None of them are Christians. Money is their only God. And for the money, they'll do horrible things. And that's why we've seen genocide. We've seen the theft of land, the theft of history, and much else. It's a shame that I have to do Piers's job. Are they hiring? Can we change that name from the Piers Morgan Show to the Marquette Devon Burton Show?
Yes, I think it's totally true.
Do you think a black American would find it funny? You think that blacks should be imprisoned for the most part?
Blacks are my biggest fans. I get high fives all the
Blacks are his biggest fans? Really? Fascinating.
time. They say, Nick Fuentes, I love your show. They agree with me. And you want to know why? Here's the difference. Black people are the most victimized by other black people. You think black people want to live in the hood and the ghetto and get shot all the time? That's what happens in the south side of Chicago. You should come here. I'll take you there. We could go to
I didn't know that Nick Fuentes grew up in south side Chicago. That's fascinating. And also we find that consistently these people revert to anecdotes, but they're not anecdotes. They're made up stories. So the term would be fantasy.
Garfield Park.
My son went to Chicago University for a year, actually, several years ago.
Yeah, that's a bubble. That's a bubble. You think you're in Chicago and Hyde Park? You don't know Chicago. Go a little bit.
Yeah, well, Nick, do you know Chicago? Did you grow up on the south side? No, mind you, I've actually lived in the south side of Chicago. I also lived in Little Italy, and I lived in River North. So I've seen those different neighborhoods. Now, the funny thing is, I just get an eerie feeling that Nick Fuentes did not grow up in the south side of Chicago. So why does he feel so informed? He can be no more informed than Piers Morgan because he read about it, or he heard news reportings about it, or he just made up fantasies.
West, see what it's like over there. And I'll tell you, black people agree with me because they're tired of it too. And maybe not most of them, but a lot of them agree with what I say about that because they know how it is. That's why the first thing they do when they make a little bit of money is they go and leave to another neighborhood.
Okay.
And this is funny again too, because this is the deceit. You see, for example, if you're a white person and you are born into a low-income white neighborhood, let's say a trailer park, for example, and I only say that because this is the only way people can imagine poor whites. They've not been to Kentucky, which I've been in Kentucky, owned homes there. So you have poor whites and you grow up in a low-income neighborhood and then you become financially successful. Are you going to continue living there? No, of course, you're going to move into a higher income neighborhood, not because it's white, but because it's higher income and you're higher income. This is the same thing with black folks. They move into a higher income area. And you do have very wealthy black neighborhoods where wealthy blacks will move into. Silver Spring, Maryland, places in DC, Atlanta, and so on. So his story sounds good, but it's a specious argument. It's not sensible. And is Piers going to pick that apart? Doubt it.
So what was just remind me again, the percentage of black men who commit murder in America. What was the percentage you gave me?
It's 1 in 20. 1 in 20.
It's 1 in 100.
No, it's 1 in 20.
No. Less than 1 in 100 black US men commit murder.
And there he is. Thank you, Piers. That's the most ridiculous lie. 1 in 20.
That's the most up-to-date crime statistics in America.
That's not true. I've seen other statistics.
Okay, well, let's see if Piers presses him for the source. Let's see if Piers presses him.
They say 1 in 20 will eventually commit a murder.
So your rate means that you're saying that 5 times as many black men commit murder as the official crime statistics say.
And again, this is what they do. Number one thing is lie. Exaggeration is, one form of lying. It's a common one that they use. Exaggeration, fantasies, fake statistics.
Yeah, there's a report, I believe, on X by Data Hazard. I'll have to go and double check that for you.
Oh, now you have to double check it. And Data Hazard, is that a think tank? I've never heard of Data Hazard. Sounds like a WordPress website.
But yes, there's some pretty shocking evidence that says that it's far more alarming than you would think.
No, we're not talking about shocking evidence. We're talking about verified and vetted studies. Now, why is it that the United States government all of a sudden would be so favorable to black people that they would lie? I don't think that's the case.
Okay, but you would accept that the official crime statistics are 1 in 100, or you wouldn't accept that statistic?
I don't know. I don't have it in front of me, but I've seen other evidence.
Aha. Yes. And this is what they do. They're so concerned about the data and statistics. And the moment the true data comes out, or the data is not reliable, I can't believe it. It doesn't sound right. And this reveals the pathology. It's pure emotionalism and irrationality. Well, I don't have it in front of me. Oh, okay. So we're just making things up now. Okay. If all of the information of the whole world is not in front of you, then it's not true. I understand.
Like I said, Data Hazard on X, I believe, produced a report about a year ago. It said 1 in 20. But I mean, whether it's 1 in 20 or 1 in 100, that's a lot of people, Piers. I mean,
whether it's 1 in 20 or 1 in 100, no. That's a huge difference. It's like 5-fold differences we're talking about. So now you're conceding that you lied low key, but you're trying to stick to the outcome of the lie. It's still a lot of people. Ah, I see. Fascinating.
White people commit murder too. Well, they do, don't they?
Okay, but it's about proportionality. I mean, white people are 65% of the population. Blacks are 13%. And I think anybody would tell you that more black people proportionally commit violent crime than white people, and people vote with their feet. People would rather pay a much higher property tax.
Most mass
what's
shootings.
with the interruptions?
I'm sorry.
Thank you. I appreciate that. You know, you look at in Chicago, in New York, these neighborhoods are so stratified.
You'll see again, there's no data when Nick speaks. It's just fantasies about places that he's never lived, places he has no personal experience with. So when he mentions data, the data is wrong and false. And then he starts telling stories, but they're not stories because it's not his lived experience. It's fantasies. How can anyone follow this? It's because the populace is increasingly uneducated. We need to improve our public schools, no doubt. We need to teach how to think, and we need to teach character and integrity, clearly.
People would rather pay a high tax rate. They'd rather pay blue line, and that's just the uncomfortable reality.
You've also said you don't want to live near black people. Let's take a listen to this clip.
I'm a new generation of white person. I'm not living around blacks. Sorry. I want white kids, and I don't want my white kids bringing home black people to marry. It's racial for me. And call me.
Bro, it's racial for me. I'm a new generation of whites, and I'm a new generation of whites, and it's racial for me. It's racial for me. It's racial for me. This is a funny guy.
Racist. Oh, very Christian of you. I don't give a fuck.
Aha, there you go. I told you. None of them are believers in Christianity. Christianity is a white supremacist structure. It's not a religion. There's no God. There's no goodness. Do you not know that enslaved Africans were brought to the United States on a slave ship named Jesus? There's no God with these people. And you'd be even funnier to me to be a black person swearing up and down that you are a Christian. Oh, silly fella. Even the ones who taught you Christianity are not Christians. And then some of the low IQ blacks will say things like, oh, Christianity started in Africa. Fantastic, little buddy. Most of the African Christians got their Christianity through colonization. So you guys like Nick are liars. Yes, indeedy. Now let's see what he does here.
I mean, it couldn't be clearer, really. Unless you...
Pierce, that's a good point. It could not be clearer. Little buddy is racist as all get out. May I acknowledge Mr. Idris? He writes, thoughts. The American multinationals lobby the government to maximize profits, but it came at the cost of the quality of Americans. Now China is taking over, which will undermine the power, influence, and control they were after. They should have seen but greed and selfishness. Yeah, I'd say that's about right. And when you say multinationals, I presume you're talking about multinational corporations. Shout out to Sneakerhead. He writes, I understand the ban from Kick. I am still watching. Thanks for the stream. Oh, yeah, absolutely. No problem. You know, the key for me is not to, you see, I've said many times, I'm not here to be a celebrity. I know many haters watch me. I know many detractors watch me, but my key is to organize those who are like us. You may enjoy what I say or how I say it, and I don't blame you. I'm the best to do this. But my key is to have a movement that is one of love, one of building, and of human growth, not one with racists, be them closeted or otherwise. There was someone on a recent stream that used a racial slur against white people. I cut him off immediately because it's fine to identify some of the follies of white folks or some of the follies of black folks or particular subsections of the white or black population. But what we're not going to do is we're not going to use racial insults against the whole racial category of people, because we are not the devils. We are the saints. We are against the devils. And frankly, there's no way to, I mean, listen, Nick is sitting there lying on top of lying on top of lying. I could, that's not honorable. I couldn't follow such a thing. And I couldn't associate with a person who would follow such, because I can only believe that in your nature is something like what is in his nature, which is of hatred and of dishonesty.
You want to say that's another of your jokes, but you're basically saying, yeah, I'm a racist, aren't you?
Another lie coming.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Thank you. There we go.
You're fine with saying you're a racist?
Totally. I think everybody's racist.
And there we go again. There's the back door. There's the back door. Yeah, I'm a racist, but everybody's racist. So this is an attempt to normalize, you see. It's just like, say you're an LGBTQ. This is when they start using fake pseudoscience. That's redundant. They start using pseudoscience, saying like, oh, you know, sexuality is on a scale. Everyone has a little bit of gay in them. It's like, no, actually, you're referring to the Kinsey scale from Alfred Kinsey, who left academia in disgrace because he falsified his results. And the reason he did that is because he was a pervert and a deviant, and he was found out to be such. And it was found that his findings were not findings. It was nonsense. It was invention. His studies, they attempted to repeat them and could not duplicate the results because it was a lie. And the perverts in popular media who pushed out the idea that sexuality is on a spectrum, they pushed that out. But when it was revealed that Kinsey's study was nonsense and that he was excused from his academic position, they never reprinted the truth. And even if they did, you know, the masses had already been influenced by the first lie. So as the perverts will do, because they know that their position is wicked, the perverts will say, oh yeah, sexuality is on a scale. It's on a spectrum. No one's completely straight. It's a spectrum. You got a little bit of gay in you. 1 second. Hey there. Oh, no kidding. All right, I'll buzz you in. You need anything else? Hey, quick question for you. How much is the time delay we put on that gate? What's the most you can put on there? Okay, yeah, because when I was first reaching out, they said 30 to 90 seconds, and I said put it on the highest possible because I got some goofy folks around here, myself included. So if it is higher, would you mind adjusting that higher for me? All right, I'm gonna buzz you, and if you need anything else, let me know. Sorry about that, folks. Had some workmen doing some work at the property. I got a lot of deliveries today, so I have to unfortunately answer the phone. Carrying on.
Everybody, if we're being honest, is racist. I think everybody, the only people that aren't racist or pretend not to be are white people to their detriment.
Nope, that's a lie. There's a lot of Asian chicks. There's a lot of black people. A lot of folks. What in the heck? Hey there. I'll take whatever the highest is. Thank you, sir. Bye. All right. Okay. You know, as I said, this is the escape back door. It's the lie that, oh, everybody's a racist. No, everyone's not a racist. In fact, there's a good number of white folks I know personally. And I think, you know, it's a pity that you should have a Nerd Fuentes around because it really degrades you. It makes, you know, people look at you as though you're a potential racist because so many of those within your racial category are racist. I know a great number of white folks. I don't think they have a racist bone in their body. I, in fact, know a great number of black folks and Asian folks who don't have a racist bone in their body. And in fact, oppositely, we'll find some who are sycophants for other races that are not their own, whether it's Asian women having an obsession with white men, or it's black people or not black Americans, really. It's, you know, blacks in Africa. It's black or Indians have an obsession with white people. They're quite the opposite of racist in that regard. But in many cases, when you find that there's an obsession with one particular racial category, it's because these are the people who have been colonized and their minds were colonized and they were never decolonized. But this is a lie. Long story short, this is an utter lie. And it's an escape for him to try to normalize his abnormal, wicked behavior, you see. Carrying on.
Everybody else is racist.
But you early in the interview, you went really got aggrieved at the idea that your father was a racist. You wanted to make emphatically sure.
Hey, shout out to Piers, because that was a very good catch. Now Piers is starting to cook. He's starting to heat up. You heard me, the fish grease is starting to boil and bubble.
Really got aggrieved at the idea that your father was a
got
racist.
him.
You wanted to make emphatically
because
sure.
got him.
He's not.
Because my father doesn't share my same views on that.
So he's the exception to the everyone's a racist.
Well, everybody's a little bit racist. So maybe everybody. The difference is you're attacking my father. You know, he could get fired from his job.
I'm not attacking your father.
You are.
No, I'm not. I don't know your father. And to be clear, I have no knowledge about him at all.
Well, then let's leave him out of it. Let's leave him out of it if you don't know him.
Hang on, Nick. You put that story into the public domain on your show.
Thank you.
I'm simply reminding you of what you told everybody.
Thank you.
Millions of people about your father.
Go off.
If you now want to retract it, fine. If you want to say it was a joke, which is what your position was earlier, fine. But I'm allowed to put to you things you've said publicly.
Woo!
That's not unfair. That's not me targeting your father.
And look at the anger. Look at the anger. First off, he has the gay hand up, right? You ever see the gays like, okay, boo-boo, my daddy ain't no racist, boo-boo, boo-boo. Yeah, I retract that, boo-boo. This is Nick has the gay hand up. Boo. This is how this motherfucking face be looking. I wish I could like pull my eyebrows apart more. I need a wig. Somebody go get my Tyler Doucheberg wig. Boo-boo. I ain't no racist, boo-boo. Everybody a racist, boo-boo. Funny fella. Funny fella.
You put that story about him out
You know
there.
what you're doing. You know what you're doing.
Yeah, that's right. Telling the truth, my dear boy. Do you have a problem with the truth? Absolutely.
Asking you about a pretty shocking anecdote, which to me looked like you were saying your father made decisions about where you as a family would eat based on skin color of people who worked at these places. If you say, or use them, if you say that is not what you meant, that's fine. You can respond any way you like. But the idea I can't ask you.
I want you guys also to that these races, these hateful people, every time you quote them, they, oh, that's not what I meant. I didn't mean that like that. Oh, you're taking clips. You're taking sound bites. It's like, it's a sound bite of you, my boy.
About it without you saying I'm attacking your father is ridiculous.
Well, you are, and you know what you're doing. And there's a political culture in America where if you have the wrong views, you get fired from your job. And my father has a job. And if you go on here and say,
it's okay, you're a multimillionaire, so I'm sure he'll do fine. And stop making this about your father losing his job. But here's the thing, this is a true representation of who your father is. So let's run with it.
You charge him with racism or something, and I'm put in a position where I don't look like I'm sticking to my guns if I don't say my father's.
That's funny. You said your father has a job. I could have sworn earlier, didn't you say your father owned a shooting school, like a gun school? Huh, that's interesting how things change so quickly.
As a racist, you're putting him in jeopardy, and he's not here to defend himself or explain his views. and it's very low. And
no, it's not. He's quoting. He's not adding anything. He's not lying or misrepresenting. He's in fact giving direct quotes.
I think you know exactly what you're doing, and people can see what you're doing. I'll defend my views, and I think that, you know, so let's leave him out of it. Let's just not talk about my father, because my
amazing.
Let's leave my history out of it. Let's just not talk about my history. Let's leave my history out of it. You know, let's leave my history out of it. Let's not.
If anybody wants to buy me a Nick Fuentes hair wig, I'm wearing it.
father isn't here. I'm here.
Okay, well,
I'll
then do you accept that you shouldn't talk?
I'll defend
Okay,
the anecdote.
listen, that's fine. But then do you accept you shouldn't talk about your father on your show? And you shouldn't tell.
Absolutely not. Absolutely
so
not.
So it's fine for you to put a story out there, which would make most people who listened to that story or watched it at the time on your show conclude that he was racist. It's fine for you to do that. But if I then ask you about it, I'm the one who's being unfair and I've crossed a line. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, you're being malicious.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Listen, people are watching this live. They can draw their own conclusions about whether what I just did.
And they will.
Yeah, and I'm sure afterwards, by the way, you'll say, he ambushed me. With your own words.
Whoa.
With your own words.
That's a little presumptuous. I'm not going to say it's an ambush, but I think that's a low blow. And I think you know what you're
quoting the truth. It's a low blow. Fascinating how these people work.
Doing, and that's fine. You're a tabloid journalist. I expected that. I don't think it's an ambush because I knew it would be like this. And people will see what you're doing, and I think they'll say it's low. But as far as you want to talk about racism,
I do.
Let's talk about racism.
Okay,
let's leave my dad out of it.
Look, you've admitted you're a racist.
Well, that was racism. So that's why we were talking about it, little buddy.
Racist. Correct?
Yes, 100%.
Okay.
Own it.
Okay, that's fine. You're perfectly entitled in a free democratic society to stare down the barrel of his camera and tell me you're a racist. People can judge you accordingly. Many people who have assumed that you're a racist
it wasn't
will now have heard it from your own lips. That's fine.
There you go.
That's the point. The point of this interview is to go over the things you've said, which have led people to reach conclusions about you, and to ascertain.
Oh, by the way, shout out to the folks who support the training center. That's something that we're building for the future. Not we want to build it in the future. We want to build it now. So do support if you haven't, but rather we're building it as a place to develop revolution, to develop better culture among men, among women, better families. Donald Trump talks about making America great again. He apparently has not the foggiest clue of how to do that. I think he means make America's % wealthier. Not wealthy again. I mean, they're pretty much more wealthy than they've ever been. This is, in fact, another gilded age for the 1%. But the training center is for the 99%. In fact, it's for the 100%. Shout out to T. He writes, "Hey, Saint, do you think that the ongoing racism will evolve into something more? And if so, how fast?" Oh, absolutely. It's guaranteed to evolve into something more. That's why you see increasing numbers of these white supremacist groups marching and doing demonstrations. And when we say how quickly will it evolve into something more, it already has. The question is, how quickly will it become something that's inescapable, right? For example, there was recently a couple, two white fellas who, and mind you, it's always the usual suspects. It's always the white guys and white women, but the white guys as the lead. Like they are the most racist group of people on earth. I mean, all the evidence would indicate such. So it's two white guys, and their plan was to go, I think it was IT. I think it was IT, and someone in the chat can correct me, but they were planning to go to a small island, not the major island or the Hispaniola, which has ID in La República Dominicana, but a small Haitian island, and enslave the population, murder all of the black males, and enslave the children and the women, and which we can only imagine would consist of a great deal of sexual abuse. So these are the kind of things you see these people are oriented on. These are devils. Shout out to Mr. Chambliss. He writes, "Blacks are indeed victims, oftentimes by other blacks. Almost all whites are victims by other whites. Almost all Hispanics are victims by other Hispanics." Very simple. Yeah, I mean, this is the silliness of these people. They're purposely lying. Carrying on.
For those conclusions, are fair and reasonable or not. That's it.
Thank
so I want
you.
to play you another clip. This is where you talk about why white people are justified in being racist. Let's take a listen to this.
First, white people are every single bit.
Why does he never talk about Mexican people? Like, meaning in the sense that he's Mexican. Like, why is he always like? Is he just ignoring his Mexican side? I want him to embrace that. Also, has anyone ever asked him, would he procreate? I know he's a homosexual, but like, let's pretend he wasn't. If he was not a homosexual, would he procreate with a Mexican woman? You know, full Mexican. Be curious to hear what he has to say.
In being racist. Every single bit justified, to the extent that that means going out of your way to avoid black people when you see them.
You stand by
Absolutely.
that?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
This is a hateful little monster. Look at this little devil here. This is a hateful little monster. How anyone would want to follow someone who's in just such a perpetual state of misery is beyond me. But I suppose birds of a feather flock together. I don't know how anyone would be attracted to such a thing, or how you can hold such a duality in your mind. The fellow suggesting that he follows the saint and follows this devil. Like, nah, buddy, like, you can't do that.
So white people should go out of their way to avoid black people when they see them.
Absolutely. They would be wise.
Why?
Because it's a lose-lose proposition. If you're Irina Zarutska and you don't walk the other way, you get stabbed to death and you die.
Like, that formulation can work both ways, right? It can be like, well, if you're Emmett Till and you don't walk the other way, then you die. And I think, in fact, if we did it the other way, black people would have more examples of racial violence. And one thing we have to acknowledge is the fellow who attacked that foreigner who shouldn't have been here according to his ideas. She's an immigrant, right? She shouldn't have been in the United States anyways, but that guy was mentally ill. No one condones what he did, not black people nor white people. But more importantly, he's suggesting that it's racial violence, which who knows if it was. But what's certain is that the guy's mentally ill and he should probably be eradicated or dealt with appropriately. So racial violence, though, meaning a group or individuals attacking other individuals solely based on race, well, that's mostly white people attacking others. That's not black people attacking white people. And so I find that to be very curious. And I think that it'd be worth going through the stories on that one. But I don't think Piers has the requisite knowledge to go through that.
If you're somebody else and you walk on the subway and you stand near a black person or something, maybe it's fine. It's a lose-lose proposition. So no, I think that
I think at this point, Piers should say, well, what percentage of the times is this going to happen? Is this like 50%? Is it 80%? Is it 10%? Is it 1%? Is it 0.0? Like, what is it? I mean, this sounds utterly ludicrous, frankly.
I think that white people have been beaten into submission, that we're afraid to tell the truth about it. And the truth is that when you go into these major cities like New York or Chicago, I believe she was in North Carolina, there is a menace, which is young, black, adolescent men. They're extremely violent. And we have been told,
and bro said extremely violent,
that we have to pretend like they are every other person. We have to be colorblind to that. And
no one actually says that. I've never heard anyone say we have to be colorblind. I never learned that in schools. I did learn that in the media. That's a lie. I don't think that's not being promoted. Like, where is that being promoted? Where?
We're supposed to go and be in the midst of all this danger. And I think that at this point, it's gone out of control. You look at the BLM.
So I would ask him right there. That'd be a great time to say, okay, well, what you're speaking of, like, what's the data on that? Like, how do you know that to be true? Well, can you share some data on that? And then he'd begin to concede that there is no data. Then we can go on to the next point.
Movement. They said that the reason that black people, are violent, or the reason there's crime, is because of police brutality, or redlining, or all these other things. They said we need to get.
I'm gonna go ahead and yield the floor. If you guys want me to yield the floor, I'm gonna take a pause for the cause. If you guys want to keep it going, send in support using the information below or the information on kick.com/Marquette Devon. There's a Stripe link. If you're like, I'm good, then we'll carry on. Give you guys a little bit of time. Fantastic. I don't blame you. You know, this guy's not very interesting to listen to. And what's more is that these are just the babblers. And the important thing to understand about the white racists, especially the white racists of today, is that they're commentators and they're grifters. And because of that, they're not doing anything to actually improve the state of white people. And so all that they can actually produce is violence against those who are not white. That's all they can produce is violence, and it'll be mob violence. But they won't improve the lot of white people. They won't increase the educational level or the financial status of white people. They'll just increase the level of violence against non-white people. It's really all they can do. Ladies and saints, it's been a pleasure at this time to fellowship with you all. Until next time, peace to the saints.